This episode contains open, honest conversations about suicide and mental health. At times, the language used may not reflect preferred or clinical terminology. This topic and language used could be activating to some, so please listen with care or consider skipping this episode.
Welcome to Above and Below, the podcast of the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. My name is Sonya Bohmann, and I am the Executive Director of CIASP. Joining me today is my co-host, Zulq, and our friends Monique and Loretta. So I'm going to turn it over to all of you to introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into our conversations for today. Zulq, take it away.
All right, so I'm Zulq Malik. I'm a co-host. I'm also one of the board members at CISP, but having been in the industry for almost 30 years, so I'm not going to give away my age too much. The gray hair does. I've been around the construction ecosystem for a very long period of time. Prior to starting a technology company, I did have my own general contracting company. And because I was bored, I also had a mechanical, electrical, and a civil division. So very familiar with what it takes to be out on the job site and the nuances of owning construction enterprises, and more importantly, how to interact with the workers out there. So excited about getting to know Monique and Loretta today.
Hello, Monique Lewis. I am the founder and CEO of Next to Native Language Learning. We are closing the language gap in the construction industry. We're finding that, I think the numbers were out in December, that more than a third of our construction industry is Spanish speaking. So when you look at that, you have inherent issues with safety, communication, and sometimes even death, unfortunately. Think Baltimore Bridge collapse. So when we think about things like that, it is a life work. It is a work of saving lives. And in that process, you inevitably come up with conversations around suicide. It's hit my family personally. So this was a big one for me. But we're here our company rather, closes that language gap so that we help teams to be more cohesive, retain top talent, and so that ultimately everyone goes home.
Thank you. And thanks for being here with us today. We're excited for this conversation. Language really does matter. Loretta.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. I am a language access advisor. Most recently, I was a business development manager for a translation company focusing on the construction industry specifically because of the very high number of non-native English speakers in the trades. Like we all know, it's a very physically demanding, physically dangerous job. And unfortunately, these workers with limited English proficiency are at a disproportionately high risk for injury, fatalities, and suicide as well. So my goal is to help spread the word about language access and the strategies companies can employ to make sure that everyone can learn effectively, work safely, feel more secure in themselves, in their positions, and come home healthy and happy to their families at the end of each day.
Thank you. Thank you. We know that this conversation is going to have lots of nuances to it. It is Minority Mental Health Month, so we want to, as always, just kind of advise our listeners that if at some point you're not comfortable with this conversation, you are always welcome to tune out. But as always, we will have real and honest conversations around this topic. Monique, you touched on it a little bit, but let's talk about some of those numbers. And I know, Loretta, you're working on a presentation right now that has some of those in that. So let's talk about that if we can.
Sure. And if Loretta's doing research on this, so good to see you, by the way, my dear. Then she may have some more accurate numbers because those numbers are changing. This is not only, let me say this, last year, June of 2024, the number of, or the percentage of Spanish speakers in the construction industry. And again, this is focusing on that demographic. There are other languages in the construction industry.
There are.
Let me say that. I think it was 27%, somewhere thereabouts. Between June and December of last year, it jumped from 27 to 34. That's a fast jump. So not only is this the largest minority in the construction industry, it is also the fastest growing. So as we're now at, just hit the midpoint of 2025, it would not shock me if that number is higher. And I can't wait to see the presentation that Loretta has, because those numbers are astounding. As you see them climbing so quickly, it's something that all of us really need to pay attention to. So when we think about injuries, Loretta mentioned a great point. They are disproportionately showing injuries and sometimes even fatalities. So when you're looking at numbers like that, fastest growing, largest demographic, we've got to do something if we're trying to make sure that everyone goes home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add on to that some of the figures are even showing about 50% of construction laborers, specifically laborers, are Hispanic. That does not mean that they are completely non-English speaking, but that they do come from a Hispanic background, a Spanish speaking background. We also have to take all these numbers with a grain of salt because they're self-reported. And a lot of folks, especially these days, do not want to self-report not being a native English speaker to their employer, to their government. So it is very difficult to get accurate data on exactly how many folks are not native English speakers here in the US. In construction specifically, the CPWR is doing fantastic research on it, though. I would highly recommend looking to them for resources. And I will say, too, according to most recent census data, native Spanish speakers in the US, 40% reported speaking English less than very well. So again, we can assume that that's probably a little high, or probably a little higher in reality. That's almost half of our native Spanish speakers being less than confident in their English. And I know I am pretty confident in my Spanish, but I would not want to learn how to operate a crane or any other large piece of machinery in my second language. I would not feel safe.
You know, it's interesting. Oops, go ahead, Sal.
Just jump in there for our Canadian audience. So Hispanic, we should say Spanish, really. It makes up a percentage, but funny enough, up here it's Portuguese and Italian would make up the large demographics. There's been a large influx from European nations, so Ukraine, Polish, and some of these other Slavic countries where they're bringing in nuances. So language disproportion, I don't think it's just applicable to the United States. It's applicable universally, where a lot of the people that are in the trades or that are in construction as a whole tend to migrate from different parts of the world. You can extend this to MENA region, which is Middle East, North Africa. So Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, all those countries. Very few of them actually speak the local Arabic language. They speak every language but. So this is a universal problem that's extending across the world of how do we now better cope with that language disparity. And, you know, the tools are out there, the technology is out there that we can probably do a lot better of a job. Like we know ourselves, we've developed a tool, not a plug for the product, but Smarty speaks in different languages. So you can cut it out. I'm cool with that. But it's designed to speak in your language of proficiency, and that's important. And I think that as we carry on the conversation here, it's going to be about language of proficiency. Not that they're minorities. It's their language that they're the most comfortable to think in, to verbalize what they're thinking. And that's where the challenge becomes, because people are thinking in a language and they're going to verbalize it in some other format. And that's where the challenge is. And construction has its own language, right? So we have a language in the industry.
We do.
Yeah. I can't say the F-bombs. We use those words a lot. That's part of our language, right? It's our vernacular. Right? We use a lot of words in construction. So I have a question, Loretta, for you, just before we get too far into it. You say you're a language access provider. And if you can help translate that for our construction contractors in the community, what does that mean for them? And how could they better avail services of something to that effect? Because honestly, I don't know what it means.
When I was working as business development manager for a translation company, most of my time was spent on educating the public, talking to construction companies on the language gap and the culture gap, how serious it is, how deeply it affects every level of your company, and the pretty reasonable steps on how you can start to solve it without spending an arm and a leg. And now that I am looking for my next step, I'm continuing that advocacy. So what I do is talk to companies about what are your needs, what are your compliance regulations with OSHA, with the government, and what are the steps you can take to improve your safety and your training measures for your non-native English speaking employees, your employees with limited English proficiency, like we said, so that you can keep everybody safe, keep them happy, stay in compliance with OSHA, and also to maintain your recruiting and other HR requirements.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. That actually helps explain why people would want to avail the services of someone like Loretta or Loretta themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to touch on something that you said, and I think, Monique, you mentioned it as well in earlier parts of this conversation, but it's not just about language as much as it is also about culture. What we know about suicide statistics as well is that they are also probably underreported because they are only as good as the data that is given to a medical examiner. And in many cultures, a family will do everything they can to not have suicide be on that death certificate for a myriad of reasons, whether it is a concern about insurance or any number of things. But the biggest concern typically is because of the shame and the stigma around it. And because culturally, it is not something that is talked about in many, many places around the world. So can we talk a little bit about kind of culture in and around, the culture of the conversation around suicide? Because I think from talking to you at one point, Loretta, we talked about there isn't sometimes even a word in many different dialects for suicide, and what that really translates to, and how this conversation is more about that first and then the words that go along with it. Ready?
Loretta, were you taking that?
Ready, go.
Monique, you can go ahead if you would like.
Yeah, I know it's a tough one, right?
Well, I don't mind jumping into that one. Unfortunately, we've dealt with suicide in our own family. There are some similarities in the cultures, thinking about Black culture, Spanish culture. There's similarities in all of our cultures. Let me say that. I don't want it to be a separating sort of conversation, but there's a shame around it. My father committed suicide when I was 5. My sister was 9. And I remember for many years, my sister would lie about it. Someone would say, oh, where's your dad? And she'd say, oh, he died. And they say, oh, what happened? And there were several things that she would say. And I remember sitting in the company of this conversation thinking, I was the youngest, I don't think I really understood how to feel shame about it. But she was older and it hurt. And it's been something that's kind of only in I would honestly say the last 5 years when we've introduced talking to someone about it. That's the thing. That's also a level of shame, needing to talk to someone who doesn't know you, not a part of your family, about your issues. All of us have issues. It's simply a matter of addressing it. Even that process is under a guise of shame. So, but it wasn't until as adults that we talked to someone and finally got that shame off so that some healing could start. As we've worked with the Spanish population over 20 years, that same kind of, what I'm looking for, dynamic exists. So there is a shame about talking to someone. There's a shame about needing to talk to someone. And then if someone does, hit that point where death becomes attractive and they take their own lives, oh man, that's hard to get around. And it ripples throughout your entire life and that of your family too, because they're oftentimes carrying that shame.
Thanks for sharing that. And I'm sorry for your loss. I know that as a loss survivor as well, it was a really hard conversation in our family also to want to share exactly what happened. There was the desire to make up all kinds of different reasons for why my sister died by suicide or what she really died from instead of that. It's a tough one, and it's
huge.
That shame that goes along with the conversation, and teaching people how to speak about suicide, and to be comfortable not being activated in a conversation and not being activated when somebody says certain things are really a big piece of that. And while language in our native language matters, the words we use also play a huge part in that conversation.
Absolutely. If I may add one other point to that too, part of the shame dynamic, if you will. How did I not see it? How did I miss this? That's a huge piece of it. And when we think about the lens of construction, when this happens, because it happens more often than we know, as we know that it's underreported, it's hard to not have that shame throughout the leadership.
Sure.
How did you not see it? Why didn't you ask the right question? Why didn't you check in? Why don't you have an open... What's that?
Why weren't you doing enough? Why weren't you already messaging this? Yeah.
When you get all of that in there, then it makes some people shut down completely. They're like, am I blamed for this? How did I miss it? My mother grappled with that for a long time. How did I miss it? And the truth of the matter is, I've been kind of on the other side of this many years ago, but at 14, I thought it was a great solution to commit suicide. And, sometimes those emotional coping skills can run through families, and it certainly hit me. And I remember at 14 years old, I was a kid, but at 14 years old, I planned it. It sounded very peaceful to me. And I thought, this is great. I can't imagine how that would have further rippled through my family, trying to figure out what did I miss. The truth is, if someone has decided to commit suicide, you likely will not know by design. They're keeping that from you by design. And that can be really difficult to unpack as survivors, trying to figure out, how did I miss this?
Yeah, absolutely. There is that woulda, shoulda, coulda, right?
I'm going to say something totally provocative. I know that culture is influenced heavily by religion.
Sure.
And regardless of what your belief structure is, suicide is not a sin. It is a byproduct of failure, right? So it's a failure to recognize it's a series of failures. And I think, what's a sin is not actually checking in on people's mental health. There's the sin. That was the first sin committed, is that you forgot to check in on your family member, your loved ones, your relatives, even your workers. Not checking in is where the problem starts from. And that emptiness that people are feeling, that leads to dire consequences.
So I think that's a tough position to be in. If I could be a little bit provocative, that puts the blame on the people that are in the situation, those that are left behind. I would like to suggest, and I think that there's evidence to back that suicide typically comes from an illness or a feeling of despair where you have such pain that the only way out that you see is that the only relief you see is that you can find a way to make that pain go away. And in your tunnel vision that typically happens, that there is only one way out, because what we know about keeping someone from dying by suicide is that from the moment there is suicidal ideation to the moment they are able to access their lethal means and carry it out, you have a window. And if you can create time and space during that window, that's where you start to allow for that light to come in. If you think about Joyner's interpersonal theory of suicide and those overlapping bubbles that make that Venn diagram, if you can pull apart some of that and create that space, that's where you allow then for some light or some openness to come in and separate from those thoughts and to change that despair a little bit.
So
With
there's
respect
so
to your
much.
comment, so I tend to lean towards Sonya and on this matter. And I say that because we're new friends. Yeah, I want to keep this. But no, when I think about that dynamic for myself, it wouldn't have been my family's fault.
No.
It was something where I didn't have hope. And I think that lack of hope is a huge factor in committing suicide. You're thinking, where are the avenues where I can see this getting better? And if you can't find one, you're like, well, this is the perfect solution. Because in death, I don't have to feel any of this. So oftentimes it's a thought out solution. Obviously not one that your loved ones want you to pick, but it's a thought out solution. And when it comes to our industry, what I think is a kind of a precursor to curbing this is a trust. Because that window that Sonya talked about, if you don't feel like there's someone you can trust, or someone who will understand you, someone who won't blame you for, why can't you just get over it? Why can't you just don't worry, be happy? All these accolades people say, things that people say that honestly are not helpful when someone is in that dark place. But having that, that be in some safe space that they can actually say, I'm having a hard time. Mm-hmm. And someone say, what do you mean? And then it go into a place where they can actually speak freely. That piece, I think, is pivotal.
Well, and you know what? Thank you, because that enlightened me with ideations of what we could and couldn't do. So I guess if we were to dissect people's time, work takes up a very large conscious portion of your day, right? So let's subtract the hours where we're sleeping. Here's my engineer in me coming out. So it's 24 hours in the day. Let's subtract 8 hours out that you're not going to be conscious. Anyways, you're hopefully asleep. And you're getting your rest and rehabilitating your body. That leaves you roughly with another 16 hours left for your day. And of which 50% of that is consumed in the workforce.
Gone. Yeah.
At least.
Right? We're not talking about the drive to, the drive from, the time you're sucking down some food or your favorite donut or anything else in construction. 8 hours is spent together as a community while we work. And as an employer who's been in this situation where we've had workers that are having some challenges, they're having challenges for sometimes external reasons. And the benefit from an employer's position is if we make the place safe, we can see what the challenges are and we can probably point them in the right direction. So when I look at it from an employer's perspective, the failure is when we don't allow that communication to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
We've
So
talked a lot about
company culture.
I'm thinking about the company culture because really our audience are a bunch of contractors, a bunch of workers for contractors. And we need to help them with their tools to say, hey, listen, your 8 hours, which is 50% of their conscious day, is where you need to help create that subculture. Because I think Giovanni with OGCA shared a stat that the cost is somewhere to the tune of $1,000+ So how do you save yourself $400,000? Create a safe spot.
Exactly.
We had another guest, I'm losing his name right now because I really suck with names, and they experienced a loss in their company, and the gentleman went to the job site. Help me with his name, Sonya.
Steven?
Was it Steven?
Was it Steven or Jason? It wasn't Jason.
Wasn't Jason. It was Steven, where he showed up. We showed up with some food on the job site.
Oh, that was Paul. We haven't aired that episode yet.
Oh, sorry. Well, hey, Paul, you're on 2 episodes.
That was Paul.
Paul showed up with some food on a job site, and 4 people reached out to him. I believe the number was 4. Reached out to him immediately thereafter. So we did the math. It was like $100. So for $100, this employer created a safe spot that allowed 4 people to actually seek a little bit of help,
Right.
and probably introduce the idea of help culturally through food and a language of caring.
Well, that's interesting because food is its own love language, right? So we're talking
My
about
favorite.
Let's be honest. So, Loretta, I'm sure that you have some things to add to that piece of the conversation. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on around pre-literacy and some of those pieces of the conversation.
I would say as far as pre-literacy goes, there are a lot of very tangible strategies to try to increase language access for your team, both the limited English proficiency and your native English speakers, because it is a two-way street. It's not fair to simply put all of the responsibility on your LEP workers. So like Monique said, if we can both do the work, it goes a long way in making it more efficient. I'm learning some Spanish, you're learning your English. The company is supporting both of us in these efforts because learning a language is hard and it takes a lot of time. So the fact that we're both doing it puts us on more even footing and will help us to communicate better on the job site because Spanglish gets the job done a lot of the time.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes. So translating all of your most important materials is a really great idea. Send it to a qualified translation provider so that they can navigate the nuance of construction language and also the many different dialects of Spanish that you will find on most job sites. But reinforce them verbally. Like we said, illiteracy rates in Spanish and in English are a lot higher than most folks realize. About 1 in 4 U.S. adults struggles with low literacy, even as a native English speaker. So reinforcing written materials verbally, doing your videos with voiceover in Spanish is also hugely helpful rather than subtitling, for example. Putting images in whenever you can to try to minimize the number of words on the page. Images are very impactful, especially like you mentioned, we tend to skim a lot and an image will get the message across a lot faster than the words. But I would say that there are other strategies. My favorite that I would promote is most of you probably already have a bilingual staff member who is doing your translation and interpreting unofficially. They're your de facto language service provider on site. They're probably not getting paid extra to do it. They probably don't have a special job title to do it. They're simply going above and beyond their responsibilities. Have that individual take a look, but I can tell you too, at a certain point, that individual is going to get really tired of doing all this work for free. So my recommendation is to look who your bilingual champions already are, give them the promotion, the recognition they deserve, and give them the time and the space they need to accurately and fully dedicate themselves to these linguistic tasks. That way you can still save money if you don't want to pay a professional to do it, but you're going to increase your accuracy and you're going to give this person a huge load off of their mental stress by having to do a job that you're not paying them to do.
So what I'm hearing is use the tools that are available, but verify, right?
Exactly.
We have options, and let's just make sure that we are, giving everybody equal access whenever we can.
Absolutely.
If I may add to that, I think there is a safe marrying of the two. As we have stepped into the age of AI, there is no turning back. When we got televisions, no one was like, "Oh, let's walk this back." Everybody was like, "No, let's walk this forward. Let's make it bigger. Let's make it sharper." That is where we are with AI. It's not going anywhere. I think that ignoring it is not the way, but also using it 100% or relying on it 100%, like Loretta was saying, is also not the way. There is a safe marrying here. However, we talked before about culture. If we are simply just translating our videos, which we offer, Loretta does too. Yes, that's a great tool. It's important to have that quick localization, get the information out there. But if our effort stops there, it still doesn't check the box. We often we call it in-house a top-down and bottom-up approach. where bottom up, you're teaching, your laborers English so they can function better and be of a skill set where they can be promoted.
Sure.
You go top down where middle management, HR, foremen are learning Spanish. When you're doing this, where everybody's coming to the table, I think Loretta mentioned this earlier, you're creating a culture of, we care about you, we see you, we're really trying to make this work, we're a collaborative team. That's how you create safe spaces. And I think we all can agree that even if we were to translate a whole video, it shows a willingness, but I don't know that that fully goes the full way in creating safe spaces. That's how you do that, so that you make sure that ones think, oh, they're putting forth this kind of effort, then I need to say something. They're trying this hard, I need to say something.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for it. Obviously, if you're on the job site, something needs to get translated or interpreted now. There is no time to dilly-dally. You're going to use whatever technology you have available to you.
Better, yeah.
It has to get done. So there's no way I'm saying that to not use any of the technology, but when you can do it, do it fully. I hope that you do it fully.
I have a question of both of you guys that might help a contractor out. Do you guys have any tools that allow them to survey what predominant cultures and languages they already have on their job sites? Because I can tell you, somebody who's sitting in their office on a regular basis and who probably goes to the job site once or twice a year to deal with a major problem probably has no clue what culture on the job site anyways. And to blanket everyone to say they're Hispanic, for my people in Mexico, I say my people because I wish I lived there. My people in Mexico will tell you that they have a very distinct society over and above in Guatemala and Ecuador, El Salvador, and it can go on and on and on with those lists. So to think that we can paint them with one brush with Hispanic, that's going to wipe the slate clean. I don't know that'll do it. Have you guys seen any tool out there that can help someone to do a survey? And now they got tangible information. Go, oh, I got all these.
We need these 5 languages versus 1. Is that what you're saying, Zulq?
I'd love to say
there's cultural, and then there's languages, right?
Yeah, of course.
Linguistically speaking, when I say Hispanic, I'm using it at the actual literal meaning of the word, which is coming from a background of a Spanish-speaking country. It does not mean that you are from Spain. It does not mean you are from any one country. It means that you come from a background of a Spanish-speaking country. We can often safely say Latino in the U.S. because the vast majority of our Spanish-speaking workers come from Latin America. But technically speaking, Hispanic would be the most all-inclusive term for people who come from a Spanish-speaking background.
I will say, Zulq, you have a great point. Most executives have no idea. Like you said, they visit the site once a year. When we are talking with construction companies, usually that's not the person we talk to for very long. They pass us off to their safety coordinator or someone in that realm because they're the ones that actually know what those numbers are. Is there a tool that we have? Honestly, no. The tool that we use is a conversation, because this is not a packaged solution like a one-size-fits-all. You have a Spanish speaker, use this, So we have to have that conversation and figure that out, because usually your safety coordinator or the foreman, the lead on the project, they'll know exactly what those numbers are because they're battling with it daily. Loretta also mentioned one thing that, I think is always interesting. Our foreman is bilingual. Well, whatever you hired that foreman to do, he can't do it if he's translating all day, because translation is constant. What about this? What about that? Well, he's got a question about this. It does not stop. So whatever you hired him to do, he's no longer doing in favor of being a translator. So a conversation has to take place to understand what those numbers are and then address them. One other point you mentioned, yes, Mexicans are not the same as Puerto Ricans, not the same as Dominicans. That's fair. But if I were to relate that to the U.S., New Yorkers, Californians, Floridians, not the same. But there is a certain large percentage of our language that is universal all over the states. And we start talking about pop versus soda and dude versus bro, Vicky's had some issues. But generally speaking, we can communicate with someone from New York, even though some of the dialects may change. So it's kind of like that. When you're talking about Spanish translation, there are some nuances that need to be addressed. Pato, for example, means duck in one language. In another language, it means, what is the word? It just left me in English. Homosexual. So you got to be careful of which word you're using. But overall, once you figure out what you're dealing with, it's something that you absolutely can address if you know language.
So that's another thing that AI is not going to pick up on.
No, they're not.
They're going to do the official proper translation. It won't do the slang, right? Like a lot of these.
It's not going to know.
It's not going to give you slang. Right?
One of my recommendations is to tackle this problem right away in onboarding. Include a section for, do you have cultural preferences? Do you have a language preference? Would you prefer to receive your safety training in English or in another language? However, the key to this is that you need to brag about yourselves really hard, because a lot of folks are not going to want to raise their hand and ask for special treatment. So I need you to say, we are so proud to offer training in a variety of languages, and let folks know that there will not be a repercussion if you ask for your training in Spanish, because it's something we're already offering, whether or not you specifically request it.
So if I understood it correctly, orientation during onboarding sessions, a great opportunity to get that detailed information. And I think as an employer, being able to share the stuff that they already have just shows them that it's more of an, can't use the word inclusive anymore in the United States, but it's more of an inclusive situation where we're trying to say, hey, if we missed you, what can we else do to help you out with your language needs, if there are any?
Yeah, throw out an anonymous survey once a year if you haven't done any of this work already, because folks might be more honest in an anonymous survey.
I know you guys mentioned earlier about this idea that your safety director or your foreman knows. Very important that we translate that and get that up another layer or another level, because that's really where the change is going to stay forever.
Exactly.
And that's the challenge we have in the industry, is that they'll say, well, don't worry about it. Let your safety director deal with it. Well, probably the wrong approach. And I can say this for someone who owned a company. Probably the wrong approach, because if I need to make sure that my company pivots, it's going to happen from me. They can talk to me all they want, but when I recognize that there's a challenge, right? And we're talking about creating safe spaces. This is all about safety around mental health.
Right.
And more than just, how do you prevent yourself from cutting yourself with a chop saw? This is about how do we create a safe space, mentally speaking, that we can help our construction warriors. That's our term for our workers. We can help our construction warriors be in a safer mental space, because they've already got these challenges for the other 8 hours that we're not with them. And we want them to keep a safe spot within our 8 hour window.
I completely agree with that. I think, unfortunately, I don't want to be provocative. That was not my goal.
Go for it.
But I do want to be honest. I think that's important to do that. We're looking at an old white boys club when we think about historically in historically in construction. Let's say this: most Americans do not see a need to know another language. Most Americans are monolingual. Why does an American living in America speaking English need to learn Spanish, Gujarati, Korean, any of those things? So that concept of learning another language, being sensitive to other cultures, sometimes in this industry is quite low. Getting up to those levels is extremely important. Otherwise, it won't stick, just like you said. We often, we're actually starting a series soon. I guess you're hearing it here first because it just fits. But Dear GC, these are the things you need to be aware of. It is going to be a whole series, because they aren't sometimes in touch with what is going on their sites. Have no idea. So we have this kind of survey for them, just to, no big skin in the game survey, but says, are you checking the box? Because oftentimes on those higher levels, they're like, no, we're good. We don't need translation. We don't need anything. Yes, you do. Because if you're paying attention to those numbers, you need to do something, because for every 10 that are leaving, only 3 are coming in. And if that demographic is growing this fast, then the 3 coming in are likely 2 out of 3 are going to be non-English speaking.
So for the guy who played with the old white boys club, played for a long time in there, had to pierce through the corporate veil, who does not fit this box or look like they do? That was me, right?
One of these things is not like the other.
Yeah, 100%. That was me. By aid, educational background. I can give you the shopping list of all the reasons why I knew I was better than them. They just didn't know it yet. They have one thing all in common. Yeah, no, that's okay. You can leave that one in. That's the blooper reel.
I love it.
They have one thing in common. They're all exploring the rest of the world. So I don't care if you're in the United States or in Canada or you're in Portugal. Every one of them has this idea of, I want to eat food from other cuisines, right? That's one thing people in construction are not shy about, is food from other nations of the world, right? So to say that they have a cultural ignorance towards them, I'm going to say that they didn't feel the necessity to have that into their work life. They like it in their personal space.
Heard.
I think if you can kind of, I think the conversation piece is to say to them, listen, forget when you're out dining and figure out what restaurant you want to try out this time, or when you're on vacation and you're exploring the planet. Our workforce is one planet now. Yeah. We're no longer a Anglo-Saxon white community on a job site.
Right.
It doesn't exist. Like, when they say minority, I'm like, the white people, they're minority.
Right.
Like, on the planet,
Right.
white meal,
Right.
limited production, right?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, they do like culture. They just probably haven't been prompted enough or probed enough to say, hey, why don't you do this? I bet you if you bring it to them, absolutely, empanadas for everyone, right?
Yeah.
They'll do it. It's just that there's this stigma to say that, did you know this? And like I said to you before, is there a survey? Because I bet you most of them go, oh shit, I kind of forgot about that. Because you're dealing with finances, you're dealing with surety, you're dealing with the next contract, you're dealing with your lawyers. All these other things consume our brains on a senior management level. We forget what we really need to keep an eye on.
Right. Well, I think I was just gonna, to jump off of that is that this conversation is so new anyway. And it's not new as much as it is finally starting to become more commonplace. And so the thought that you have to put all of this information out can be overwhelming. And then the thought that, oh, wait, I also have to make sure I'm translating it is additionally overwhelming. And then figuring out things like, and I faced this for us as well, is when we start to translate things, translating your website isn't as simple as sometimes translating your website, because what about all of the attachments and all of the links and all of the things that you have?
Videos.
Right? And all of the videos and all of these pieces. And then if you do some, does it look like you didn't do enough or you don't care? So what's the one thing that you would say, or the one tip that you would give to an employer to be able to do right away that will make a tangible difference in exploring language for their employees?
So I would say it, of course, is going to be whichever document is going to keep your employees the safest. And that could look different for every organization. But I will tell you right now, the top requests that we got as translation providers for the construction industry, employee handbooks and toolbox talks. Those were incredibly common. It's often safety folks and HR folks who come to us looking for translations, and that employee handbook is a really good place to start.
That's awesome.
Answering that same question, I would say the first place to start is, and this is my communication background coming in. When we think of workshops, our most featured or most important ones are coming in talking about company culture and language access. And we usually end that with I remember one time I shared this with Loretta. It's like a one-pager, most terms that you need on a construction site.
So like a glossary.
Yes, like a quick reference guide.
Love that.
I mean, my brain.
Crib notes for construction.
Cliff notes for construction.
Not crib.
Let's do it.
Actually, you might hear that again.
We actually did. So our education committee does have, and Loretta was key to helping us with this, but
nice.
we have a glossary of terms.
Yeah.
And step 2, because we just finished step 1, is to translate it.
That's it.
Oh, did you put all the other acronyms in? What is
We
that?
do. It has all of the acronyms.
So many acronyms.
And with the one that we do is a one-pager. Obviously, that's not the whole thing. I think that what you guys are talking about is probably something that's more involved.
Yeah, but I would love to see your guide.
We often do a one-pager, and what that does, myself and all of our language trainers are bilingual. So we come in, do this workshop, have both, all languages there, speaking in both languages, telling them this is what we're trying to do. Because the reason I say that this is the best first step is that it's putting everyone on notice. We're trying to fix this.
Sure.
We are taking step 1, and it's very visual. It's in both languages. Everyone's on the same page. People can ask questions in their native tongue, because there's sometimes you understand a thing, but then you process that and you have a question about a thing and you don't have the language to ask your question. So if both languages are being represented, in our case with bilingual corporate trainers coming in, then it's like everybody's on the same playing field. And then you leave with this handout that says, okay, this is step 1, y'all. Then you come in, you might call Loretta, which you should, by the way, and ask about how do we translate our handbook? That is a huge project. How do we start translating our website? But I don't want companies, this is the message I hope is heard. I don't want companies to feel as though we're doing nothing unless we do it all.
Correct.
Right.
No.
Make an effort, start the ball rolling, because I got to tell you, the willingness, I'll say this, if I was in Japan, I don't speak Japanese, so I don't want to surprise you here. But if I was in Japan, I don't. Konnichiwa, that's it. Okay. But if I was in Japan and I'm working for a company, everything I see is in Japanese. My food's not there. My family's not there. All my creature comforts not there. And my company comes to me and says, we're trying. That means so much to me. Even if you haven't fully gotten there yet, the fact that you're trying lets me know you see me and that more importantly, you care about me. You're already starting this culture of care, this
Right.
culture of you matter. So I think that that conversation is the best first step to put everyone on notice we're trying here. And then you start to get contributions you didn't even know were going to come of different ones saying, thank you, can we do this? Thank you, can we do that? Then you're really hearing what your company culture is and how you can improve it from the horse's mouth, if you will.
So I have an anecdote to add on to that, a very perfect example. I consider myself somewhat of an expert in this subject because I've been working in it for years. I have my master's in translation and interpreting studies. I feel like I know a thing or two, but clearly I don't know that much. I was on a committee for a local construction organization, and I had been working really hard to increase language access and get our Hispanic involvement up. And we'd been going on and on about how to make our big yearly event more friendly and open and useful, really, to native Spanish speakers. Got to the event. There was an incident where somebody was interpreting for his students in Spanish. He got shushed because somebody didn't like the noise that they were making. He explained, of course, that he's interpreting because there are no Spanish resources available at this event. I approached them after to talk about it, and I simply asked his students, what do you want in Spanish? What would be most helpful to you? And they very specifically said, all we really want is one session presented exclusively in Spanish on fall protection because it is the most dangerous thing we do. Boom, right there. It took 10 seconds to get to that answer after how many hours we'd been theorizing about what would be most useful to this community when all we had to do was just ask. So that's really my main
point.
yeah, my main point to give to everybody. That's my advice. A lot of the safety folks I worked with in translation too, they wanted to help. They didn't know where to start. They didn't want to come across as stepping on anyone's toes or being culturally insensitive.
Sure.
When in doubt, just ask your team and they will probably pretty openly tell you what they want and need.
So I just want to bring this on to our CISP mandate a little bit. And not taking away the safety side, please do not think of that for 1 second. Monique, can we steal your "we're trying"? That would be a great handout from CISP that every job site can put about mental health. And if we get all the different languages, I don't know how we're going to get them all translated. Something to put on a safety board that says, we're trying. We just need your help too.
And like,
Yes.
dog.
Okay.
I
So
think that
it's
makes
an
perfect sense.
easy give to everyone for free. We do
Yeah.
it in colors, right? I love giving work to Sonya because then she just delegates it back to me.
Right. What I can promote is that, we all have, and Canada has it as well, that 988 is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. It has the ability to answer calls, texts, and chats in over 250 languages, including American Sign Language.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that cultural element is saying we're trying. We're just starting. We need
Yeah.
your help. That's a very powerful message. Say we're trying.
Like it's simply this willingness and the way that it opens up. They're just like, I can't believe you're even trying.
Sure.
Like if they can't figure out why you would take the effort or make the effort. So that kind of spreads like gangrene in a good way. In a company, when you say we're trying and this is our effort, the way that it opens up and you kind of get this cohesive collaboration is just
100%.
delicious. And it happens synergistically by taking that first step. And isn't that what we're trying to create at our companies? CEOs and
Sure.
GCs
Safe,
that want to really
cohesive.
grow. If everyone is on the same plane, that means that they're taking ownership in what they're doing. Then you're all fighting the same fight. How does that not translate to retention? Hiring, retraining is expensive.
Right.
If you can invest in the crew you have and really show them that you care about them, then you can promote from within. That's a lot cheaper. And you get someone who's really got a real buy-in. That strengthens the company from the inside out. So it just makes sense. The effort makes sense. Dollars and cents.
Well,
I'm going to put this out there to the employers. Real simple. You do 1% step forward towards them, they will bring you workers themselves that they trust. You want to know how to drive your recruitment costs down? Be good with your workers. Show them you care, and actually mean it. Don't do it artificially. Show them you care. Take these little steps forward. They will bring you more workers. You don't even have to go looking for them.
Talk about
Right.
the labor shortage gone.
Right.
It'll be gone for you, not in the industry, but it'll be gone for you. And that's what counts at the end of the day. It's got to be gone for you.
So one final thought, because we are at the end of time, and this has been an amazing conversation, and I wish we could
I've enjoyed
talk
this so
for 2
much.
more hours. But Zulq and I always ask our guests one final question, and that is, what would your word of the year be?
I made a decision after a brief and lovely mental breakdown in December that I was going to spend this entire year trusting my gut and going with what my intuition told me. And so far, it has really served me in some ways that I didn't see coming and seemed terrifying at first, but intuition.
We wish you nothing but the best with your intuition.
Thank you.
I think my word would be try.
I like it.
For many reasons. Of what we've discussed, of course, lends itself to that word, but also when it comes to trying new things. I will soon be 46, which is like, how did that happen? But I like your surprise. It was a nice touch. But with that, as we get older, sometimes we think, I'm too old to do this. I'm too old to try that. I'm too old to succeed at that. I'm too old to try a new hairdo. I'm too old to change up my look. Try, because when we do, we end up surprising ourselves and doing things we can't even imagine. And when it comes to language learning, we're talking about adults. We're not talking about 15-year-olds who have no jobs and no families. We often talk ourselves out of this task. But as we've been talking about this whole time, why language matters, your willingness to drop the fear and just try has insane payoffs. So, unfortunately, as we get older, we lose that, that gumption to try. No, bring that back. I think the word for the year is absolutely try. See what happens. Surprise yourself and everybody else.
We're trying.
I like it. Wow. Thank you so much for being here, sharing vulnerably and openly in this conversation. I know that we appreciated it and our listeners will as well. So my word of the year is intention, and Zulq's is gratitude. And so grateful. And I will say that with intentionality and grateful hearts, we thank you for joining us today.